Just the headlines? Find out what's going on and what it means with me, Dennis Prager, this morning at 11, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. And Trump is struggling with Republicans, even as he launches his Made in America tour yesterday. He launched that.
What was your favorite part, when he jumped into the fire truck or when he put on the cowboy hat?
Yeah, I don't really have a favorite part when it comes to politicians playing dress up, so that's not my thing. But Trump's thing was trying to kind of refocus national attention on his policy agenda, things that were popular enough to get him elected president when he discussed them during the campaign, like his kind of whole America First from the worker American company, Made in America, Buy America, Hire America, all of that was back in force.
Every member of my administration shares the same goal, to provide a level playing field for American workers and for American industry. And we are providing it much faster than other countries would like. So it's been really a pleasure. We want to build, create, and grow more products in our country using American labor, American goods, and American grit. When we purchase products made in the USA, the profits stay here, the revenue stays here, and the jobs, maybe most importantly of all, they stay right here in the USA.
As we've talked about a lot, I'm not much of a fan of his populist fair trade approach to the global economy, but he also added something that I am a fan of as part of his remarks yesterday in D.C. with the manufacturing companies and others present.
But for our nation to really prosper, we must lower the tax on business, one of the highest in the world, and we must repeal job-killing Obamacare. We have to do that.
So you've got Trump voters that like all of the above, many Trump voters. Some are more free trade like I am, but they certainly like the idea of reducing taxation, both corporate and personal, to engender growth. We got to grow. And job creation and Obamacare repeal to restore more choice and reduce premiums for health insurance. And all of what you just heard President Trump saying seems to be in great peril in terms of moving from campaign rhetoric to actual policy. And so where do we see this presidency as we get to the end of the first year, and with the idea that 2018 will be singularly focused on politics and less focused on policy? For for discussion on this topic, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend David Harsanyi, who's a nationally syndicated columnist and senior editor for The Federalist, thefederalist.com. David, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
So, what about that? So you've got the left obsessed with Russian collusion. You've got kind of the establishment obsessed with the vote counting on Obamacare replace, which, of course, they're not getting to 50 in the Senate anytime soon, it doesn't appear. And Trump sort of middling both by recommitting to fair trade discussions, talking about objectives in the NAFTA renegotiation that's scheduled to start within the month, and getting back to some of his economic-focused campaign rhetoric. How should we make sense of all of these moving parts, and who's moving in a positive direction?
It doesn't seem like anyone's moving in a positive direction from my perspective. I mean, if we talk about the health care reform bill, obviously it doesn't look like it's going to happen, and that's a big problem for Republicans approaching 2018, politically speaking, I think, simply because they can thank Obamacare for 1,000+ seats locally and in Congress and so forth in the presidency, and then not to repeal a bill that they've been talking about forever, I think would be just height of hypocrisy and a disaster for them. As far as the populist trade stuff goes, I guess we'll see what happens with NAFTA renegotiations. I am not a fan of it either. I think it's sort of economically illiterate, actually. I am all for lowering taxes, but I'm not sure how they're going to get tax reform done in Congress if they can't get Obamacare done. I mean, all these things are sort of tied together. You know, obviously they can piecemeal it and maybe lower corporate taxes, things like that. But I don't know. I mean, it just looks like a big mess, and it doesn't look like anything's going to get done.
Well, do you think they have the votes right now to just basically repeal Obamacare?
I think they should have the votes because they voted on it before when they knew that Obama was going to veto it. But I think many of them are nervous about doing it. They don't feel they're in safe seats. They don't feel like they have to do it. A repeal bill with nothing else has a lot of dangers because, you know, if you start seeing collapsing Obamacare markets, exchanges, local, you know, in states, you're going to see a lot of people without insurance, and the blowback from that would be pretty tough. And then you might have something worse come out at the other end as far as, you know, the conservatives' perspective. So I don't know. They do have enough votes. I'm for it. I mean, I think moving in that direction, whatever it takes, should be done for political purposes, but also for policy purposes.
And then this matter that bubbled up to the surface last week when DHS Secretary Kelly briefed the Congressional Hispanic Caucus on the status of the DACA program, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and suggested that per a pending court case, which the administration, the Trump's Justice Department, may or may not vigorously litigate, that you could have 800,000 to 1 million DACA persons on the deportation list, and the fear that would create if that actually comes to pass.
Right. I mean, I think that during the Obama administration, things were done that sort of corroded separation of powers and was a executive abuse from my perspective. And one of the things was how they dealt with those programs. I think the Trump administration, whatever they do, they need to make sure to try to push it to Congress and do something legislatively and fix these things. It just seems like such a mess that I can't even contemplate something like that happening. But this is one of the issues. Another one of these issues, by the way, are the subsidies for Obamacare markets, which were found unconstitutional by a court that the Trump administration continues to pay. These things need to be fixed if you care about separation of powers and things of that nature, and they're not. So literally, I feel like other than some, I guess Trump has pulled back on some of the bureaucracy, and that's definitely helpful, there hasn't been a lot done. And I just want to also say, I mean, Republicans can't always blame the president either. They need to pass Obamacare. It really has little to do with Donald Trump at this point. He I think, would sign whatever came to his desk. They're the ones who promise this forever, and they're the ones who should get it done.
Well, what could they do? I mean, John McCain, Senator McCain, obviously he's in his hospital room right now recovering from that surgery. He's asking for a bipartisan bill. He wants to work, lean across the aisle, and I know it's no surprise there, but could be a last-ditch effort?
Well, I mean, the idea that if they simply repeal and then work with Democrats to come up with something new, I guess they could. It just seems to me that you have to decide, if you're the Republicans, whether you're going to try to bring in the moderates and get something done or bring in the conservatives. You can't obviously do both. So if you want Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, these people, you're going to have to do a bigger repeal bill than the ones that you've had. And trying to either you repeal it and come up with something brand new or you don't. The effort hasn't been put in. There is no bill. If this bill that just died, there is no new bill. There is nothing fresh on the table. No one's working on anything. So I just don't see how they can make it happen. You could work with Democrats. I mean, it looks like that's what's going to have to happen because there's nothing else that can be done. But Democrats, I saw this morning, I mean, their ideas are simply more mandates, more taxes. I just don't see how a lot of Republicans could get on board with that sort of thing.
Well, and right, and if you just say, well, we'll just repeal it and go back to what it was before Obamacare, the problem is you've Republicans have bought into component parts of Obamacare, like be able to keep your kids on insurance till 26, which I know was available before Obamacare, but it's been codified in federal law, and dealing with people who have pre-existing conditions, providing high-risk pools or subsidies or mandated plans. Even the amendments to what is proposed in the Senate right now that isn't apparently garnering a majority keeps the idea of insurance providers having to provide at least one plan that includes all of the Obama mandates. So it's not even so simple as to get all the Republicans who voted for repeal previously on board because they like some of what is included on Obamacare. They want to fashion it differently, so they may still be unwilling to go back to the pre-Obamacare world.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, these things are intricately tied together, the economic side of it, and to simply take parts that you don't, keep the parts you want, don't keep the, you can't. It creates havoc, and it's going to create havoc for a lot of people. And I think that is just worse than anything. So, Republicans. I mean, I can't believe that if Republicans can't get on board with Ted Cruz's amendment, which I think is imperfect, but at least it offers some choice, and I think it would give people a different perspective about health care to give them better and easier plans to use. I'm not sure what exactly they want. What kind of reform are they looking for? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, maybe some of those Republicans want to be perceived as wanting to repeal and replace Obamacare, but they don't really.
I think they don't really, or I think that they never thought they'd have to, and this is quite a surprise to them. Yeah, I mean, once you give in on the notion that government's supposed to provide this to everyone, basically, not just people who really struggle, but just generally, it's going to be very hard to extricate yourself from that kind of policy. And I just don't see how it happens. And I think that's for me, this is a pretty big disaster. I think Republicans ran on this for years, and to now to just simply say we can't do it, I don't know how that plays out in 2018.
I don't think it's going to play out well. He is David Harsanyi, nationally syndicated columnist, senior editor for thefederalist.com. David, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about